I am, I've known Elon for 18 years now, and you should never bet against Elon. I can tell you all sorts of crazy personal Elon stories, but you never want to bet against him.
Hey, what's up, everyone? So that was Peter Thiel, who is one of Elon Musk's former business partners from PayPal, and I think they're currently friends. And anyway, he wrote a book called 0 to 1, and it basically talks about different companies and how they innovate and what an impact that innovation can have on the success of the business. So I'll talk about it a little bit more at the end of this presentation, but this video is about short squeezes. So yeah, let's get right to that. And I'm also going to try a slightly different format today because there's so much information to cover. I'm going to try to go over everything really quickly and then come back to some of the stuff at the end so that we can cover everything. So first of all, just real quick, I've made a bunch of other videos talking about how I really didn't think that there would be a Tesla short squeeze. In my personal opinion, one still has not happened yet. I think that the rise in the stock has been for fundamental reasons. Anyway, that changed a little bit last night when I started to think about what has gone on recently with the stock. And so I compared these two time periods together. The blue line is 2013, and this is really the first big run that Tesla went on where it increased 765%. Also, you may know that a bunch of institutions and hedge funds have just recently reported their fourth quarter holdings of Tesla, and I wanted to get some more information on really what was going on behind the scenes. So I signed up for fintel.io, and I have no affiliation with the website. But if you guys haven't, please think about subscribing, because I try to do things like this to give you a little bit more information, and I just paid and subscribed for this website to make this video a little bit better. And if you like this stuff, I really hope that you'll consider subscribing because it just makes the quality a lot better. And thanks again. So anyway, basically Tesla reported a quarter that was excellent, Q1 2013. The stock rallied, and they went on a few days later to announce a common equity raise, and that solved liquidity concerns that people had, and the stock went on to rally after that. And shorts had been covering this whole time that the stock was rallying, but the stock still continued to increase. The red line is 2020, and we just had something eerily similar. So we had a good quarter where the stock spiked, and then we had another common equity raise. And a lot of people are sort of saying, well, the rally's over, or the stock's gone parabolic, or it's gone too far, too fast, or whatever. And my whole thing is that if you keep your eye on value, you don't really need to think about things like parabolas and a stock going parabolic. You just kind of need to think about where the stock could potentially go. So this chart has been helpful in getting me to anchor my thinking around, like, not just looking at the past and what the chart has done, but just focusing on the future. And here's an analog for what occurred once in the past with Tesla. One more thing, the chart is anchored at the respective earnings dates for 2020 and back in 2013. So right here where the spikes are, the blue line is from May 8th, 2013, and the red line spike here is January 29th, 2020. Here's what I found with the institutions, and I kind of laid everything out here. So we have Elon at the top, who is the number one shareholder of the whole company. So he's very aligned with shareholders. You know, all his compensation basically comes from stock grants and the performance of the stock. If the stock goes to zero, he's probably worth less than zero because he owes a lot of money against his stock. So anyway, he's up against all these big institutions, but here he is at the top of the leaderboard. And when people consider a short squeeze, they really try to think about, like, what are the amount of shares that are short relative to the float, relative to the freely traded shares. And previously, in order to determine the float, I was just taking Tesla's diluted share count minus Elon's shares to arrive at the float. But I think it makes a little bit more sense now to start adding in some of these institutions that have been around for a long time. So like Bally Gifford owns 14 million shares. Susquehanna I'm not including because they've been sort of trading their shares around a lot and they have options and things like that. But Capital World, I think it could make sense to include them. Tencent, I think it could make sense to include them. So in a middle case, if I kind of take Elon shares plus Bally and Capital World and Tencent and get kind of an adjusted float, then I think the share short, which is 23 million today, as a percentage of the total float is around 19%, which is really pretty high. And so a lot of people may be thinking like, oh, the shorts have capitulated, but that's not necessarily the case. And then here is Y charts data on sort of the top companies that are traded in the US, anything over 50 billion in market cap. And you can see that, Tesla is basically double their nearest peer, which is AMD. And so the short interest for Tesla is still like off the charts. You still have a lot of negativity, a lot of skepticism. There is still things on CNBC where they're having bull and bear debates, and people are articulating both sides of the thesis fervently in the news media, and that's still going on. By the way, here's my last video. And I reached this conclusion in early January, but my thinking at the time, and it really hasn't changed, but my thinking at the time was that I didn't think there would really be a 2013-like short squeeze. And just go back and watch that video if you want to know why. But I thought there would be a run in the stock for fundamental reasons. And now I think, that could change a tiny bit. By the way, just a few interesting charts. So in 2013, the orange line is the short interest, and you can see that the shorts had really capitulated by the time the share price started to increase. And even though the shorts stayed down here at around 20 million shares, the price continued to go for a long time. So to the people that say, the short squeeze has already happened or it's over, that's not what happened exactly in 2013. And you can see here, same thing in 2019, 2020, you kind of had the most people shorting the stock when the stock was on the very lows in middle of 2019, and then people have been covering, so the short shares have been coming down, and Tesla could potentially be just on the very beginning, the very forefront of its run. I've also covered this in the past too, but 2019 really was not a very painful year for Tesla short sellers because the stock was basically flat on the year. You can see that it kind of dipped into the middle of the year, and then it rallied at the end of 2019, but it kind of finished 2019 almost where it started. So the pain for the short sellers really may not have even started. And finally, this is a log graph of Tesla, and it really just shows that, this is the increase in 2013. It just kind of shows that once a stock goes parabolic or quote unquote, whatever that means, it can continue to keep going up. And so I just don't think it makes sense to exclusively look at the chart and convince yourself that, well, it must go down next because it's gone up. And finally, just a few more details. So this is a log chart of that comparison graph that I did showing it actually says 2012 squeeze, but it's 2013. And if anybody has any questions about this, let me know in the comments. But if you want to freeze the image here and just see kind of how I did the scaling for the chart and what the high and the low prices were on both sides, you can do that and check it out. But this is what I think, we'll see. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much. If you've stuck around to the end, I'll just tell you a little bit about why Peter Thiel thought, and this is from back in 2014. I'll just tell you a little bit about why Peter Thiel thought that Tesla was a 0-to-1 company, and it's because they met these 7 criteria: having superior technology, having great timing, and he talks about how Elon secured a $500 million loan from the U.S. Department of Energy to sort of fund Tesla in its early stages. Thiel talks about how it's important to have a monopoly, basically a market or a sub-market that you can dominate, not just be an also-ran, but again, really establish like a 0-to-1 category and own it, just like you would if you had a word processor in a world of typewriters. You'd be a category of 1. Even though you're competing with people that want to type documents, you have a different or better way of doing things. He talks about distribution, and this speaks to the Tesla model of not relying on independent dealerships, but instead sort of owning their distribution network. Durability. Oh, I missed team. And team is very important in the 0-to-1 philosophy. And he has this cool quote from Elon where he says, Elon says, if you're at Tesla, you're choosing to be at the equivalent of special forces. There's the regular army, and that's fine. But if you're working at Tesla, you're choosing to step up your game. So if there's anybody who works at Tesla and is watching these videos, it would be really cool to hear from you. Leave a comment and let us know. Whatever you can say or can't say, that would be cool. And anyway, finally, secrets. basically talks about how Elon had this idea where he had to make it cool to own an electric car, and he wanted people to feel like they looked good driving it. And he talks about how Leonardo DiCaprio ditched his Prius for a Tesla Roadster and what a positive impact that had on the company. Anyway, that's it. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon. And please hit subscribe if you haven't. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon. Bye.
And we were early investors in SpaceX back in 2000, early 2008. And one of the things Elon was talking about at the time was rocket reusability, which I thought was just inconceivable that this could ever be done. That it would be sort of like dropping a pencil, and how would you get the pencil to land, or something like that. And they actually. It actually looks like they've pulled that off.